Hi, I'm Don, and I'm an old school kind of guy. Now, at our last Aquarium Society auction, somebody brought in a couple of old school aquariums. They were stainless steel frames, and one of them even had a stainless steel hood. So it set people to talking. I actually bid on both of them. I thought it'd be cool to have them, but bidding went too high, so I let them go. They were just a nice to have, you know what I mean. But somebody sitting there asked me how old they were. And I said, well, they're probably from the 60s. They said, not before, and I was ready to answer, and the guy sitting next to me, who's been doing this longer than I have, said, no, they were not from before the 60s. He said they were probably mid-60s to early 70s. And somebody asked, how do you know? And he said, simple, they didn't have a slate bottom. So we talked for a little while about what it was like when this old school guy was a new school kind of guy. Or should we call this the preschool days? What was it like, say, in the 1950s? The guys that taught me. Well, you didn't often find people with 100 tank fish rooms, I'll tell you that. And if you did, they had a central heating furnace of some kind going into there, because in those days they did have slate bottom tanks. I've seen them. Now, when I saw them, they all had heaters in them, but in the old days, they didn't have heaters. They put Bunsen burners underneath each individual tank. And believe me, you had to check your temperatures constantly. You get used to it, but you still wanted to be looking at your temperatures. Because just the least change in the flame compared to the outdoors, compared to the indoors, oh my goodness. And now those metal hoods that we had, they were stainless steel. They had incandescent lights. We still use those in the late 60s and into the 70s. You could actually burn your fingers on those things. They'd get so hot. That was another way to heat your water. Didn't want to use a Bunsen burner? Well, just leave your lights on. Now you're fighting algae though. Another way to do heaters, and I mentioned this at the auction, and somebody just said, I can't imagine this. We'd use a light bulb. Now, I didn't do this. I say collectively we in the hobby. Use a light bulb, and you put it into a mason jar, totally sealed, and then you lower it partway into the water. So the mason jar is in the water, but not all the way, because you don't want water getting up in there. You seal it just to prevent splashing. That's one of those new words I'm still learning. So that incandescent light bulb inside of a mason jar would heat up, and that would help keep your tank warm. Oh my goodness. What was it like in the old days? When all the fish were shipped by boat? Well, mostly by boat. You're getting fish in from Asia. I don't know what the importers and the wholesalers and such went through, but I can imagine their losses were immense. Even coming in from South America, they'd take them by boat up to Cuba or Puerto Rico or something, and then by boat from there to Miami. Yes, sure, fish were shipped all the time. Usually they were shipped in 55-gallon drums, the metal barrels, yeah? That's what I was told anyway. I wasn't involved. Yeah, it was just a whole different world. Nobody kept saltwater fish. First off, you had to cool the water, and that was almost unheard of, very expensive. And technology was tricky at best. The saltwater hobby didn't start until basically in the late 80s. So, I mean, there were people that had saltwater way back when, but they were few and far between. In the 60s, Rift Lake cichlids were virtually unheard of. They had a few, but there weren't many. At least I never saw them. Now, I was out on the Pacific Northwest, and we got everything years after they got them on the East Coast, but I'm just saying what I remember. It was a whole different world back then. When old school was in the pre-old school days, the preschool days, now go find some books. Go find a book published in 1952 all about aquariums, and you'll find it fascinating reading. Now let me tell you this. The people that taught me, what I'm calling the preschool people, preschool not as in little kiddies, but they were doing it before there was a school. They knew their fish. They knew everything about their fish. Why? Because you had to. You had to study them to learn what they can do and what they can't. If you found out that in the wild they were kept, their water temperature was at 72 degrees, then that's what you went for, based on the books. But you know what we found out over the years is that in the wild, it's 72 degrees when they were captured, but somebody goes back 6 years later at a different time of year and they're at 82 degrees. You find out for yourself and you learn for yourself. In the old days, the only fish shipped much from hobbyist to hobbyist were killifish, because you could ship the eggs. You ship anything else and you're taking gambles, especially if you're shipping from one continent to another. That was the preschool days. Hey, but they had fun. Bye. Hey, I almost forgot. Last time I asked who could figure out what mathematical formula or principle, whatever, that I was using for when I published my old school fish guide tips, is real simple. It's the mathematical principle we call randomness. I do it whenever I think about it, whenever I feel like it. Bye.